First up, Harvard University is taking the Trump administration to court. President Trump just made a bold announcement that shook the global markets. And the Trump administration filed a request to finally terminate the Flores Settlement. Welcome to Nellie Miranda. But before we get into this video, please be sure to like and subscribe as it really helps support the channel. Now let's jump in. Yesterday, Kristi Noem revoked Harvard University certification to enroll international students effective immediately. Well, today, a federal judge just issued a temporary restraining order blocking the Trump administration from revoking Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students under the federal visa program. Why? Because the administration asked for records. They wanted to know which foreign students are involved in violent protest, pro-Hamas rallies, or worse, training on U.S. soil for hostile regimes.
Breaking news now, a federal judge has granted Harvard a temporary restraining order after that Ivy League school sued to stop the Trump administration's ban on enrolling foreign students. So this is going hour by hour now. It's changing. An expedited hearing now is also set for Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. in Boston federal court. So right after the holiday, the Memorial Day holiday. President Trump's ban was just issued yesterday. And he did this in response to what the DHS calls the Ivy League's pro-terrorist conduct in response to campus protests. The move marks another hit to the university, which already is facing huge cuts to federal research funding. So Trump's taken the money, and he wants to block who's coming into this country. Some 27% is the number of foreign students on campuses. He wants to slow that down, just like he slowed down the U.S. border, so he can see who's in this country. And if they hate America, as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said, you can leave and we'll help you go. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem joined the story yesterday and told the prestigious university to bring it.
Harvard brought these consequences upon themselves. Harvard has a history of allowing not just protests, but violent protests where students were assaulted, they were discriminated against. They were verbally abused, and they've even facilitated a training for a paramilitary group affiliated with the CCP. So it's not just pro-Hamas activities that they have allowed to have happen on their campus. They've also allowed participation with communist China.
Harvard already responding to this news, saying it's illegal. We could anticipate some kind of battle royale through the courts. But for now, we wish you the best. Secretary Noem, thanks so much for joining us with this.
Tell them to bring it. I'm on the side of America, and they need to be too.
I don't know. This sounds like a basic matter of national security to me. But Harvard, instead of cooperating, they've decided to sue. They're claiming the request violates the First Amendment and it might intimidate future applicants. So let's get this straight. Asking whether students on U.S. soil are connected to the Chinese Communist Party or foreign militias is now a violation of free speech. Since when does being a guest in this country mean you're entitled to secrecy? Harvard says that they've reformed governance and are fighting anti-Semitism. But conservatives are asking, why does this keep happening under your watch? I mean, I don't think it's about censorship. I think it's about safety and accountability. Now let's talk about something that hits all of us. Trade. President Trump just made a bold announcement that shook the global markets. Starting June 1st, the Trump administration plans to impose a 50% tariff on European Union imports. The EU has been stalling on trade deals while the regulations have unfairly hurt American businesses. President Trump said, quote, "The European Union was created to exploit the United States in trade matters."
Breaking news on the push for U.S. trade deals. President Trump says that talks with the European Union are hitting a brick wall and is now looking to take action. He said this about an hour ago, quote, "Our discussions with them are going nowhere. Therefore, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1, 2025. That's about 9 days from now. There is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States." And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent here exclusively. And good morning to you, Mr. Secretary. And thanks for being here.
Morning, Bill.
On what has turned out to be a rather busy news day. And good morning to you. You were just in Canada the last few days meeting with members of the G7, the EU, and I want to get into all of that. But with regard to this move on the EU, how bad was the conversation in Canada to lead to this?
Well, the conversation in Canada was fine. The problem is the lead up to that. The 90-day pause on the April 2nd tariffs was based on countries or trade blocs coming to us and negotiating in good faith. And I believe the president believes that the EU proposals have not been of the same quality that we've seen from our other important trading partners. I've said there are 18 important trade deals that we have to do. I'm working mostly on Asia, and that group has move forward with some very interesting proposals. They're negotiating in good faith. We've already inked a deal with the UK. I think there are a couple more coming in the near future. So I think this is in response just to the EU's pace.
Let me get back to that in a moment. I mentioned June 1st is 9 days away. Is there an opportunity for negotiations in these 9 days?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate on TV, but I would hope that this would light a fire under the EU, because, Bill, I've said before, EU has a collective action problem here. It's 27 countries, but they're being represented by this one group in Brussels. So some of the feedback that I've been getting is that the underlying countries don't even know what the EU is negotiating on their behalf.
The EU enjoys lopsided deals that hurt our farmers, our tech sectors, and our manufacturers. I think Trump is doing what any strong negotiator would do, applying pressure. Not necessarily to start a trade war, but to level the playing field. Because these so-called allies have been taking advantage of our goodwill for far too long, and I think it's time that we bring jobs and production back home. And if it takes a 50% tariff to do it, then tough. Just a reminder, if you're getting any value from this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps support the channel, and I appreciate each and every one of you who have subscribed so far. Let's jump back in. Protecting America doesn't stop with economics. It starts at our borders, and that brings us to our next story. On May 22nd, the Trump administration filed a request to terminate the Flores Settlement, a decades-old agreement that's been tying our hands on border enforcement.
The Trump administration wants to end a long-standing agreement in which the government said it would provide basic rights and services to migrant children in its custody. The nearly 3-decade-long settlement, known as the Flores Agreement, requires immigration officials to hold migrant children in facilities that are safe and sanitary. The government also has to provide them with access to lawyers and ensure that they receive an expeditious release from government custody. For more, let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez. So, Camilo, what exactly would getting rid of this mean for migrant children currently in U.S. custody?
Well, the termination of this court settlement would be a dramatic and significant change in U.S. immigration policy, and also on how the U.S. has to treat migrant children, both those who are unaccompanied, but also those who are crossing the U.S.-Mexico border with their parents as part of family units. For nearly 30 years now, this agreement has governed not only the standards and conditions in detention facilities housing migrant children, but it has also allowed independent lawyers to inspect the detention facilities that are housing these minors and to ensure that the government is complying with the provisions of this agreement, which also includes a requirement for the U.S. to expeditiously seek the release of children from detention so they can reunite with relatives or other sponsors in the U.S. The Justice Department now is arguing that this agreement has incentivized illegal immigration by unaccompanied children and families with minors, and that it has essentially inhibited the executive branch from setting immigration policy, and now it is seeking to terminate it once again. The first Trump administration tried to do the same back in 2019, but that effort was stopped by the courts, and the courts this time around will also get to weigh in before any termination actually takes place.
The Flores Settlement was created back in the 90s as a means to protect migrant children. But today, it's become a legal loophole that encourages illegal immigration, especially child trafficking. It limits the detention of minors to 72 hours, forces quick release, and prevents families from being processed together. That might sound humane on paper, but in practice, it's a magnet for smugglers who know that they can exploit our broken system. Imagine just loading up a van with children and just dropping them off at the border. And without choice, we have to release them to family members. President Trump is trying to close that loophole, and you better believe the left is already screaming about it. A secure border is compassionate because it stops the suffering before it even begins. And it protects kids who are being used as pawns by the cartel. And I believe that it gives neighboring countries an unfair advantage to easily migrate to the U.S. Do Africans and other non-neighboring countries not deserve to come to the U.S.? because they can't just walk up to the border like, what's up, I'm here. I think it's an unfair practice, period. Now, since we're talking about protecting America's future, President Trump has hinted at another potential tariff, this time aimed at Apple and other tech giants who continues to manufacture products outside of the U.S. The message is simple: bring the jobs back. Apple is one of America's richest companies, but yet they continue to outsource production to China. And that not only raises economic concerns, but national security ones too.
On Apple, there is more news too on that, okay? Here we go. On True Social an hour ago, I've long informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones will be sold in the United States of America, will be manufactured and built in the U.S., not India or any place else. If that's not the case, a tariff of at least 25% must be paid by Apple to the United States. So we've got 2 tariff threats in about 10 minutes' time. I understand that Tim Cook was at the White House this week. Did that conversation not go well?
Again, I wasn't in on that conversation. I also saw Tim this week. So, again, the president is trying to bring back precision manufacturing to the U.S. And, I think that one of our greatest vulnerabilities, are this external production, especially in semiconductors, and a large part of Apple's components are in semiconductors. So we would like to have Apple help us make the semiconductor supply chain more secure.
What I found interesting in Saudi Arabia last week was that the president called out Tim Cook for not being there. Now, you know that high technology companies, it takes time to move those production facilities. What's realistic for Apple?
Again, I don't know from company to company, so we'll have to see. I do think that Apple started moving a big portion of their supply chain out of China during COVID, when China proved to be, an unreliable partner.
Okay, so we'll see where that goes, and waiting a reply perhaps from Tim Cook, and maybe that comes today.
I mean, think about it. Why should we depend on a communist regime for the devices that run our lives? It's time for American companies to put America first. And if they won't do it voluntarily, maybe a 25% tariff will give them the nudge that they need. There might be a little consumer suffering at the beginning stages, but I think it will be beneficial long term. Do you think President Trump is doing the right thing by putting America first, even if it ruffles feathers at Harvard, in Brussels, or at the border? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you gotten any value from this video, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.